If you're a Kevin Smith fan, you may already be familiar with Jay and Silent Bob's cameo in Scream 3, but you might not know the backstory behind it. Jay and Silent Bob are a pair of characters that first appeared in Kevin Smith's 1994 movie Clerks, which is prominently displayed at the video store in the original Scream. Jay and Bob would become recurring characters who show up in many Kevin Smith films that are part of his View Askew universe, and as a thank you for the free advertising in Scream, Kevin Smith and Scream director Wes Craven decided to exchange cameos in each other's movies. So Jay and Silent Bob show up in Scream 3, and the following year, Wes shows up in Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where he plays Wes Craven, the director of Scream 4, a decade before he would actually create Scream 4. In addition to that, Cotton Weary's apartment in the opening of Scream 3 contains a copy of Chasing Amy, which is also part of the View Askew universe. The scene with Jay and Silent Bob also contains a couple other cameos, which are pretty much only findable thanks to the retrospective documentary Still Screaming, which points out a cameo from Wes Craven as the man with the video camera, and Scream 3's casting director Lisa Beach as the tour guide. To learn how Scream 3 may have had a second killer who died before being revealed, stick around to the end of this video. In Scream, movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative. In Scream 2, movies are a scapegoat for someone who is planning to be a killer. Scream 3 reverses this and has the killer make the movie, creating his own lore every step of the way. Welcome to Things You Missed. Wanting to capitalize on the hype train created by Scream 1 and 2, producers decided to go ahead without screenwriter Kevin Williamson by replacing him with Aaron Kruger. Really? The creator of A Nightmare on Elm Street is working with a guy named Kruger?
Stage name.
You should talk, Judy Jurgenstern.
Sidney Prescott has become a crisis hotline counselor, and she also takes on a stage name of sorts, going by Laura to her callers. She's unknowingly following in the footsteps of her mother, who used the name Rena Reynolds while working in Hollywood. There's a running theme of pseudonyms in Scream 3. Most of our main characters are the actors who are just as likely to respond to their character names as their actual names, to the point that it becomes kind of a joke.
It's not Sidney. Like I'm Gail and she's Gail.
Obviously it's more than just a joke though, it's important to the plot, because Roman's changing of his last name to Bridger is what helps disguise his true identity as Sidney's brother and the killer. Let's get into the things you missed. As with Screams 1 and 2, the opening shows the slaying of a couple, only this time we recognize one of the victims. It's Cotton Weary and his girlfriend. Cotton is complaining that he's only given a small cameo in Stab 3, which is basically his experience in Scream 3. Despite being a big part of the second movie, they kill him off right away in this one. One of the criticisms of turning Scream into a franchise was that it would become the very thing that the original Scream was satirizing, and we see this, intentionally or not intentionally, in Scream 3's opening. In the last film, Stab 1 attempted to recreate the opening of Scream, the death of Casey Becker, but certain things are embellished for Hollywood, like how they add a shower scene, which seems to have no purpose other than showing a little skin. So Scream 3's opening literally does that in the form of Cotton's girlfriend getting out of the shower. There's even a shot of Christine's towel dropping by her feet, very similar to Casey's bathrobe in Stab.
The whole shower thing's been done. Vertigo, hello?
It's not Vertigo, it's Psycho, as we have discussed many times on this show. Then, Christine even channels her inner Casey Becker herself when she kicks Ghostface to get away. Scream 2's opening was all about the Stab movie premiere, so there's a slight nod to that as well. When Cotton is frantically driving home, he nearly hits a bus with a Stab 2 advertisement on the back. This next one might not be a reference, this might just be Cotton being entirely focused on saving his girlfriend, but he leaves his car door open as he goes inside, much like Bob Sims in Halloween, who is probably also focused on one thing entirely. As you know if you've seen Scream, Halloween is basically considered the big one, and it's referenced all the time. But not that much in Scream 3, although there is one part where Sidney hears her mother's voice telling her that she'll protect her from the boogeyman. The boogeyman is a pseudonym for Michael Myers in the Halloween films. Ghostface tries to pressure Cotton into revealing the location of Sidney Prescott before offing him, and then we see Sidney living a secluded life with her dog. By her door, there's a Fall of Troy poster advertising the play she was in college, Agamemnon. Does that mean she actually went through with being in the play after defeating Mickey and Debbie on its stage? That's dedication. She also continues to wear the Greek letters given to her by her boyfriend when the murders were happening in the last movie. Can you really blame her? He was the best guy she ever dated. The next character we meet is Gail Weathers, who's giving a speech about being a journalist lady. A woman in the crowd is wearing a number 81 jersey. Not many people know this, but Scream 1996 was not the first, or last, slasher movie to be called Scream. The original was a 1981 film. I have not seen it, but according to the Letterboxd rating, it is not very very good. This scene also has the best extra. This lady is just really into Gale's speech. This speech is part of a lecture series called F.W. Bester Lecture Series, Faces of Journalism, named after the movie's art department coordinator Claudia Bestor. Just like the last two movies, Sidney is at home when she sees bad news on the TV that involves her and her past. As we're first introduced to Sunrise Studio, where most of the movie takes place, we hear the song Red Right Hand by Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds, which by this point is more or less the Scream theme song. This is our 4th time hearing it, and the end credits would be the 5th, although that one is a special Scream 3 version meant to close out the trilogy. Stab 3's subtitle is Return to Woodsboro, and this phrase keeps finding new meaning throughout the movie. It's actually a leftover from Kevin Williamson's original outline for the script that he planned after writing Scream 2, but most of it was not used for what would become Scream 3. We would symbolically return to Woodsboro immediately because they're shooting on the Woodsboro set. Sidney would return to Woodsboro when she's later chased through this set. Later still, the focus of the story is brought back to Woodsboro when we learn new information about the motivations of Billy and Stu. And the movie would end with everybody returning to Woodsboro, or at least what appears to be Woodsboro, to join Sidney at her secluded home. But the first scene on the Woodsboro set contains more depth than what meets the eye. When we meet Roman, the director of Stab 3, he's busy making a case for keeping the production going after Cotton's death.
They hire more security, hire the National Guard, just don't kill the movie.
Which is funny, because he literally would kill the movie, at least for the time being, by killing everyone in it. He's seen arguing with the studio executive played by Roger Corman, who tells him that violence in cinema is kind of a no-no right now, which is also a little joke, because Roger Corman is a well-known horror producer and director. He literally made movies such as Night of the Blood Beast, A Bucket of Blood, Bloody Mama, Battle of Blood Island, Bloodbath, a remake of A Bucket of Blood. But his concern over gory movies in 1999 was very relevant, because Stab 3 is the in-universe stand-in for Scream 3, and Scream 3 was going through the same problems at this time thanks to the Columbine Massacre, the worst high school shooting of the millennium. The Columbine Massacre was carried out by 2 high school seniors, and that's really the only similarity to Scream that exists, but that didn't stop people who were already against horror movies.
Everybody that didn't like horror films, that was in a position of power, came after the studios.
Columbine happened in April 1999. Scream 3 started shooting in July, so there was a lot of pressure from the studio to limit the gore, which is why we see less of it in this movie. According to Matthew Lillard, he was already paid to appear in Scream 3 as the returning villain Stu Macher, but Columbine put an end to those plans. Wes Craven attempted to make sure that the cultural context was not forgotten by sneaking in this article about Columbine into the scene where Sidney looks through her file at the police station. The other articles in this file are just nonsense. Look at this one. The local police chief, the first official commissioned by the city with the search committed in the name of the parents. The shadowy suspect faces 121 charges of murder, kidnapping, arms, smuggling, fraud, and theft. His plea is that he hadn't committed these offenses, said the parents' attorney. We will find them again at all cost. When Gale, that is the real Gale, shows up on set, she's hit by a wave of dreadful familiarity.
Deja voodoo.
Her misuse of the term déjà vu right outside of Sidney's house calls back to Sidney's own misuse of the phrase in Scream 1. The nostalgia does not end there though, because the new Gale, aka Jennifer, is dressed more like the old Gale. But what happens next is not all old and familiar. Gale runs into Dewey, who has become an advisor for the movie. When the two met in Scream 2, Dewey was upset with how Gale portrayed him in her book. Now, Dewey has turned the tables on her, and Gale is upset about how he's portraying her in Stab 3. In my previous Scream analysis videos, I pointed out Wes Craven's Easter eggs to his other major horror franchise, A Nightmare on Elm Street. We don't really get much of that in the third one, but there is a tiny nightmare scene involving Sidney where she sees her dead mother come to the window. For being honest though, the reference points a lot more to Salem's Lot than it does towards Freddy Krueger. The next day, Sarah Darling, who plays the character Candy in Stab, has a meeting with Roman at the production office.
I'm Candy, the chick who gets killed second. I'm only in 2 scenes.
Like Cotton's gripes about his character, the complaint about her screen time could also apply to her role in Scream 3. She's only in 2 scenes. There's also another one-to-one parallel later, where the police mention that there are 3 versions of the Stab 3 script in order to try to keep the ending off the internet. The exact same approach was used for Scream 3. And then there's the romance between Dewey and Gale. This time, rather than art imitating life, life would imitate art. These two got married for realsies right before they started shooting. Anyway, during the line reading, Roman goes off script and then claims there's a new version.
It's not just a new script, it's a new movie.
What movie?
My movie.
Although we don't know it yet, she's speaking to the real Roman, and he's telling the truth. By killing the people involved in Stab 3, he's creating the lore for Stab 3. He's creating his movie. Candy is the successor to Tatum in Scream, and her death closely resembles Tatum. Ghostface. Ghostface chases her into the prop room where among all of the movie props is a fridge. Remember, Tatum went to the garage to get drinks from the fridge. She's punched through a door where she's left hanging on her stomach, and this is where Ghostface gets her. She dies in the exact same position that Tatum died in the pet flat. While Gale and Dewey are out to lunch to discuss their past relationship, Gale emphasizes the importance of leaving him alone to go on to the sequel to 60 Minutes, claiming that she could have been the next Diane Sawyer. It's a bit of a Scream 2 reference. Diane Sawyer was the journalist that Cotton most wanted to be interviewed by to gain fame. Back on the movie set, we have maybe our most obvious set of crew reference Easter eggs yet on the director's chairs. Yes, they are called that. This one's for Peter Deming, the director of photography. This one belongs to Sheila Waldron, the script supervisor, and there's one for Bruce Allen Miller, the production designer. That evening, the cast gathers for a depressing rap party at Jennifer's house, where the killing continues with her security guard, and Roman continues to quote-unquote write his movie by literally sending in script pages telling them what to do via fax. If you don't know what fax is, look it up. The house blows up, taking out Tom, aka the new Dewey, and the old Gale punches the new Gale in the face. This is yet another twist on the Scream tradition of Miss Weathers getting a face full of knuckles in each film. The characters end up at the police station where they're finally reunited with Sidney. One nice detail at the station is the display of movie posters and books about film. It's like Randy suggested in Scream 1, that the cops should study movies to save time. Speaking of Randy, he makes his return in the form of a post-mortem video message which he would use to communicate a few new horror movie rules.
True trilogies are all about going back to the beginning and discovering something that wasn't true from the get-go. Godfather, Jedi, all revealed something that we thought was true that wasn't true.
This was not his first time referencing the original Star Wars trilogy. We saw him mention it in Scream 2, and it wouldn't be long before it came up again. The two Gales meet the Sunrise Studios archivist, who is played by Carrie Fisher, aka Princess Leia in Star Wars.
I was up for Princess Leia. I was this close. So who gets it? The one who sleeps with George Lucas.
She also shares something in common with Sidney. Her trilogy also involves the surprise twist where she discovers that someone is her brother. They pull out the file for Maureen Prescott, who at the time was going by Rena Reynolds. At the bottom of her resume, we can see that she started her acting career in theater, just as her daughter would go on to do. One of the plays that she was in was even called I Want to Scream. So they've got this whole little family involved in the dramatic arts. Maureen with her acting in plays and horror films, Roman the director, and Sidney the live performer. If Candy's death was a callback to Tatum, this scene where Sidney is chased through the movie set is a repeat of her own scene in Scream, right down to her screwing herself by locking herself in with Ghostface at the front door. There's also another similarity. In Scream, she calls the police using this program on her computer, and Dewey immediately shows up at her door. In Scream 3, she literally just yells out for Dewey, and he comes running because he's already at the studio. The cops show up, and we see this one new cop named Jay West. This is the last crew reference Easter egg. It's a reference to the assistant production coordinator John Burton West. After discovering Maureen worked in the movies, Dewey and the Gales confront the producer, John Milton, who basically tells them that he held these parties back in the day where industry bigwigs took advantage of actresses, and he basically turned a blind eye to this illegal activity. If you followed the entertainment industry recently, this might sound familiar. In 2018, film producer Harvey Weinstein was arrested as many allegations came out against him, some of which dated back to the 1970s, the very same time period that John Milton claimed to have these parties. Could this be a coincidence? Maybe not. From my understanding, Weinstein got away with this for as long as he did because he targeted small-time actresses. They did not take legal action because they were afraid they'd be blacklisted from the industry, since Harvey had many contacts with all of Hollywood. For example, 2 actresses up for parts in The Lord of the Rings lost their roles simply because Weinstein told Peter Jackson that they were a nightmare to work with. That's the kind of influence that he had. But with the advent of the internet and social media, the victims were able to discover that they were not the only ones. There were a lot, like a whole lot. So they came together, knowing that they couldn't all be blacklisted. The point of all this is that while they didn't get him arrested for many years, there were rumors about Weinstein's behavior. So it's very possible that Wes Craven may have known about these rumors and pulled the biggest power move of all time by putting a Harvey Weinstein character in his movie, which by the way was produced by Bob and Harvey Weinstein. But unlike these relatively unknown actresses, Wes Craven had already made it in Hollywood. Weinstein couldn't really do anything to him, and besides, he was already nearing the end of his career. And despite being the executive producer, Harvey Weinstein couldn't really stop Wes from using Scream 3 to make this indirect accusation. Because if he ordered Wes to change the John Milton scene, he's just gonna look guilty. According to the film's editor, Patrick Lussier, in an article on Slate, the only notes to come from the Weinstein brothers at all came from Harvey's brother, Bob, and he just had a note about the ending, which I'll get back to later in this video. So Wes had his boss backed into a corner where he could not give any notes. It's gotta be one of the most legendary moves that Wes has ever made, if in fact this is not a total huge coincidence.
Hollywood is full of criminals whose careers are flourishing.
I'm not a criminal!
Yeah, I don't think it is. And to further add to the suspicion, some of the accusers are connected to the Scream franchise. Rosanna Arquette is the real-life sister of David Arquette, Dewey. And Rose McGowan, who plays Tatum in Scream, is the on-screen sister of David Arquette. Angelina Jolie potentially has two characters named after her in Scream 3, Jennifer Jolie and Angelina Tyler, who says this.
I did not that pig Milton to get a leading role just to die here with second-rate celebrities like you two!
The movie's climax takes place at a mansion party where Roman's birthday is to be celebrated. While we don't realize it at the time, I don't think it's any coincidence that Roman puts his plan into action on his birthday, the day that he became Maureen Prescott's bastard child. The party splits up to explore the mansion, and Jennifer finds herself stuck in a passage with a ghost face. She sees Dewey on the other side of the soundproof glass barrier and struggles to get his attention. This is the same situation that the real Gale was in Scream 2, when she was unable to communicate with him in the recording studio. There's another repeat of a Scream 2 situation in the basement, when Roman is knocked out after falling down the stairs, but his body blocks the only exit. This is like when Sidney had to climb over Mickey to escape the crashed car. Roman uses his capture of Gale and Dewey to lure Sidney back into the house, but she's prepared and greets him with her hidden gun. Unfortunately for her, this is the one time that she didn't deliver a follow-up shot to the head, and it comes back to bite her. The final confrontation takes place in the secret screening room where Roman was theoretically conceived. After revealing himself as the killer, there are a couple more parallels to Scream 1, the bringing out of a gagged victim, and Roman cocking his head just like Ghostface when he first pinned down Sidney at her dad's house. After he is defeated, we're treated to an epilogue. We see Sidney essentially let her guard down for the first time since that fateful phone call a few years ago. Then we see Detective Kincaid, the cop from LA who apparently came back with her. He's holding a bowl of popcorn and says they're about to start a movie. So the Scream trilogy ends just as it began, with popcorn and a movie. I personally think that this was supposed to be the end of the series. By comparing the last ever Scream scene to the first ever, we see the changed state of the world before and after the defeat of Roman, the driving force behind all of the bad things that happened to Sidney in the 1990s. However, having only one killer doesn't follow the Scream franchise formula, and there could be one more villain from the production of Stab 3 who is yet to be taken care of. Earlier in this video, I mentioned two darker topics, Weinstein and Columbine. I stated that Wes Craven and his editor only received one note on the film, and it came from the innocent of the two brothers, Bob Weinstein. His idea was to remove the second Ghostface to just focus on Roman. The reason for this, or at least one of the reasons, may have been teased in the film. Remember the scene where the producers are having the discussion with Roman about the future of the film, emphasizing that stringed instruments in cinema are a big deal right now? A big reason for that was Columbine. So the shooting may have also been part of the reason that they moved away from the initial concept of having two killers. The accomplice was going to be Angelina Tyler, the woman who was set to play the fictional version of Sidney in Stab 3. You can still see remnants of this storyline in the film. In fact, some fans believe that Angelina is still canonically the sixth Ghostface, and she was killed before she ever got the chance to reveal herself. Her story is that she won the role in a talent search, but we later find out that she did this by sleeping with the producer.
You gotta be praying this movie keeps going.
Of course I am, but not at the expense of people's lives.
You either die a hero or live. There are three main sequences that make Angelina look guilty. The first is shortly after Jennifer's house explodes. She briefly disappears and comes down the hill well after everyone else, almost like she knew where to jump to avoid taking fall damage. This allows her to completely miss the altercation with Roman. Dewey asks her about her whereabouts, but she never actually answers the question.
Tom was in the house!
Then there's the bathroom scene, which by the way is set up exactly like the school bathroom scene in Scream 1. Sidney discovers her seemingly changing into the Ghostface costume, but Angelina plays it off as her wanting to take props as souvenirs now that the movie is shut down. But what if this is actually her getting caught and being the actress that she is, talking her way out of it? This could also be the reason that Roman decides to kill her off. He probably figured that Sidney knew she was guilty, and it was better to get rid of her before she had the chance to be arrested and interrogated, where she would possibly give them both away. He knew Sidney wouldn't accuse her immediately though, because she wouldn't want a repeat of Cotton Weary on her conscience, who went to jail because he was wrongfully accused by Sid when she wasn't quite 100% sure. So I think Angelina makes up an excuse, quickly scurries away, and goes into the soundstage to finish putting on the Ghostface costume. When Sidney goes into the movie set version of her room, there are clearly two killers here. Someone is pushing on the door, and then 3 seconds later, Ghostface is all the way on the other side of the room and behind her in the window. I think the one in the window is Angelina, because the shoes we see during the struggle are the exact same ones that Sidney noticed under the bathroom stall. When the lights go on, we get a better look at at Angelina wearing these shoes with a black skirt. I don't know the terminology for this piece of clothing, but the loose black fabric could easily help her blend into the Ghostface cloak. And the third sequence where she looks guilty is Roman's birthday party. Sure, they appear to be using the buddy system for safety, but Roman and Angelina are each one-on-one with a victim. Dewey and Gail also poke around and find a Ghostface mask, cell phone, and voice changer in a closet. But these are not Roman's, because he clearly has his own. I can understand having a backup costume, but why have a second voice changer? Angelina was supposed to be with Tyson, but she disappears, and Roman fakes his death just like Billy did. In hindsight, he's probably the one that taught Billy how to make that Hollywood-level corn syrup mixture. During the big reveal, Roman even suggests that he gave Billy pointers on being a killer, such as having a partner to sell out once you got caught. This means that Roman probably also had a disposable partner. When we last see Angelina, she's frantically trying to leave the house. Could it be that at this point she knows that Roman is done with her and she's now just fearing for her life? Or is this part of the act? We don't actually see her die, she just gets stabbed in the shoulder and dragged out of view. It's awfully inconclusive for a Scream character to go out like this. Maybe Scream 5 will feature Stu and Angelina as Ghostface killers. Personally, I don't think there's a ton of evidence to suggest that she's alive, though it's definitely a small possibility. But I am of the belief that she was Roman's accomplice, and there's a ton of evidence to support that. Let me know your thoughts on Angelina in the comments. Scream 3 was marketed as the last Scream, the final act, the very end. So join me next time on Things You Missed as I cover Scream, also known as Scream 4. Make sure you subscribe to CZsWorld for new horrors every week, ring the death bell and select all notifications, and I will see you in Wes Craven's final movie, assuming we both survive.